Welcome to another motion tutorial. We're going to jump into three-dimensional space with this project. But to start, we're going to need to create what's called a word bank. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to animate a camera that's going to fly through a bunch of words and end on a final set of words. And we want to generate all of those words from a word bank. So what we're going to do is open up our Launchpad. We're going to go to Text Edit and open up Text Edit. Now, this is really important. If you don't do this step first, this is not going to work for you. So you need to go to Text Edit Preferences, and you need to change the format from rich text to plain text. This is for new documents. So you can quit out of that. Now, this document was already created, so you need to close that and then go to File, New. This new document will be a plain text. Now, I've already put in a bunch of words here. I just pasted in. But you can type in any words that you want. The trick is you just need to make sure that they're separated on a different line. So I'm going to go ahead and file save this onto my desktop. I'm just going to name it Word Bank. And the first step's done. Now we're going to open up Motion. And we'll choose our default Motion project. As always, Shift Z on the canvas or go to Fit. And let's start building our project. We're going to create a camera. We'll come back to this camera later, but we need our project to be in three-dimensional space. So I don't know why mine didn't ask, but most likely when you create that camera, it's going to ask you if you want to switch to 3D. Say yes. Okay, so, and I'm going to create one more group here. And the bottom group, I want to click this icon here, so that it looks like this. This is a 3D group, this is a two-dimensional group. That means that this group will not be affected by the camera. We're going to put our background into this group here. So in our library, we're going to go to generators, and let's just choose gradient and drag it into that two-dimensional group right there. In our inspector, we'll go to our generator, roll open the gradient controls. Instead of linear, I'm going to set this to radial, and I'm going to right click inside of my canvas and edit position, and this will allow us to edit that gradient. And now I want to reverse my gradient here, so basically I'm going to grab this dark color, move it over here, grab this light color and pass it, and just put them on opposite sides. That reverses our gradient. Okay, so make sure the dark blue's roughly in the center of the frame, and we can let this light go all the way off to the edge of the frame. So now we have our background set up. Let's head back up to our main group. We can even lock that background so we don't mess it up in the future. Head back up to this main group, and we're going to go back to library. We're going to generators, text generators, and we're going to choose file, and we're going to bring that in. And here we have file. We'll go to inspector, browse, and we'll select that text document that we put on our desktop, Word Bank. Okay. Now that that's done, we're going to do what's called replication. So with the audio, with this file, it says audio on mine, it may not say that on yours. With this file selected, I'm going to click replicate. And now here's where you need to follow along really step by step with me. So I'm going to go to properties. Actually click back over to replicator in my inspector. And I need to make sure that 3D right here is selected. And under shape, I'm going to go to box. And from tile fill, we're going to choose random fill. I'm going to scale this box up to be the size of my entire project window. And now, I'm going to roll down the size control. And under depth, I'm going to choose 7500. Press enter. Now points, we're going to just drag this up until we start to fill up our screen decently. Now we'll work our way down these parameters. So I'm going to scroll down to angle random, and I'm going to turn this up. I don't know. I like 130. That seems to work for me. Now we'll keep scrolling down and see play frames. We're going to uncheck play frames. And then random start frame, we're going to check that. And now you'll see that we'll randomly generate different words from that word bank instead of just the first word. Okay, so what we've just done is created a three-dimensional cloud of words. So to show you that, I'm going to click up to my camera. I'm on active camera. And right here, I'm going to click on this camera control button and start to move my mouse, which my trackpad isn't working, so I'm going to do this manually. I'm going to go to camera properties, position, and start rolling through the Z space. Which should, let's reset this to 0. I have a glitch going on with my computer right now, but basically that'll animate through that space. I'm going to go to camera here in my settings and choose angle of view. And I want to slide this to the right, something like 60 degrees. And what that's going to do is it's going to really exaggerate the depth in our project. Alright, so again, let's see if I can get this camera preview to work for me. Which it's not. Oh, it's updating at the end, but that's alright. This will work once we start animation, and you'll see what's going on. But basically, if I go to active camera right here and choose top, this is going to look down on our project, and I'm going to press Command- to zoom out. So here's what's happening. Our camera right now is right here. I'm going to move it back. And here are all the text documents, text words. And as I scroll up, you'll see the words end here at about 2,000. So if we go back to active camera and let that finish updating, what we're going to do is we're going to place one set of text at the very back of this entire project, and then we're going to have the camera automatically animate to go to that text. So to do this, we're going to click on our group 1, click on our text tool, and right in the middle of the screen we're going to click, and I'm just going to write audio video production. Now you can write whatever you want. So there's our file. It's hard to see it. Let me just hide this replicator so you can see what's going on here, okay? So there's our finished text. This is where our entire project is going to end. Now what I want to do is I want to rotate this file and put it back in the center of the screen. And what this is going to do is we're going to use a behavior on the camera that's going to make it animate to this text file, and it's going to force the camera to roll as it travels through the rest of those words, which is going to create a really neat effect. But you need to rotate this before you do that. So we've got that rotated. Now what we need to do is under properties, position of that text. Position needs to be set to negative. We're just going to say 4,000. And that's going to move that way back there. In fact, we made our text replicator 7,000 pixels deep. So we're actually going to set that to negative 7,000 just to be safe. And press enter. Okay, let's turn back on our replicator. And now what we need to do is go up to camera, select camera, go to camera, to the behaviors, camera, and choose framing. Now here you'll see what the target, it's asking what the target is. This is the parameter that's going to make our camera automatically animate to a specific layer. So we're going to take that manual text file that we created, audio video production, we're going to drop it in that little well. So right now, if I just hit play on my project, you'll see the camera's automatically animated it's flying through all of these words, and you'll see it's also rotating. It's doing a barrel roll. That's because that rotation that we put on our final text file. So it's going to fly through all of this and end up on audio video production. Now it ends up way too zoomed in by default because this framing behavior basically is just designed to fill the whole frame, which we don't want to do, so we need to adjust that. So let's click on our framing behavior, and we're going to look for framing offset, and we're just going to basically pull back away from that file a little bit until it's more in the middle of the frame. So for me, dropping it down to like 590, that works for me. So let's go back to the beginning. Just gonna change my resolution down to half so this will play back smoother. So I clicked render and I chose half. That's what I did there. So now if I hit play, it should play back a little smoother for me. So here we go. We're flying through all these words till we get to that last phrase. Now there's one last thing I want to do this, and I want to create clouds that we're going to fly through. So what I'm going to do is in my group 1, I'm going to go back to my library, and we're going to go to particle emitters, and we're going to do a search for the word fog. We're going to take that fog layer, and we're going to drop it in our group. Click on fog, go to inspector, and here we need to make some tweaks. So right now our fog is just emitting from a line like you would put on the floor, but we want to make it three-dimensional so that it looks like we're flying through the fog. So the first thing we need to do is select the 3D checkbox. Then we're going to take our shape and go to box, just like we did when we created our replicator. On the box size, again, just like when we created our replicator, we're going to choose 7,000 as the size of our box. And we also want to choose random fill instead of tile fill on our arrangement. Okay, so now what we need to do to this fog is basically force it to emit fog at a much higher rate. So our birth rate, so I rolled down fog here, and I clicked on blur 11, and currently the birth rate is set to 7. That's how many new particles are created, I believe on a second basic, every second. Or maybe it's frame. Either way, it's not enough. We have 7,000 pixels of depth. We need to turn this way up. I'm going to choose 50 and hit enter. And now let's just give that a play and see what it looks like. So basically what we've done is just added a little bit of fog into this. I'll uncheck it so you can see it disappear, and then recheck it. And we can even bring this up a little bit more. We can set this birth rate maybe, I don't know, let's come up in the hundreds. Let's just crank it up until you really start to see that fog. So as we back the camera off, there we go. So I'm liking this. Fog right now is set to 220 on our birth rate. So now what I need to do is down here in my timeline, the thing about particle emitters is that they start over time. So they start with nothing and then they build up. We want it to start already with particles. So what we're going to do is click this fog layer and drag it to the left, about halfway to the left. What that does is it makes all of the fog particles come onto the screen before our project starts. So now we'll drag the end of this clip all the way out to the end of our project and let go. Okay, so now we're seeing the real effects of this particle emitter, and I'm starting to think that maybe 220 is way too high of a birth rate. As you can see here, the fog is just really thick. So I'm going to go back to my blur 11, take that birth rate, and let's go down to about 75. Now if we play our project, this is going to be really laggy, but when you export, it'll look great. But you can see now we're flying through all of that fog as if it's like a giant cloud, and we're flying through the sky. So again, 75 may even be too high. I'm just going to end it on 50. See what it looks like. There we go. 50 is a little bit more subtle. And there's our finished project. We're flying through the clouds and through this word cloud, and we end up at our final destination. Now, I'd like to point out that we did this with a list of words. You can throw images in here, you can throw videos in here. Basically anything that you can bring into motion, you can bring in and have the camera fly through. So we used a word bank from a text file, but you can also create a group of images and fly through all of those images using the same technique. So hope you enjoyed this, and good luck.